Welcome to a special edition of the Master of the Mat here on this Friday. This is the first Master of the Mat of 2024, and I'm going to be a little bit all over the place, but give me a moment while I send this link out. Okay, I'm back. So before I get started, let me put this disclaimer out there. Some of these are my views. Some of these are other good people views that I've read and I've listened to as far as the podcast go on line. Guys like Jim Cornette, Jim Ross, and other people, Dave Meltzer as well. So this is for those of you who are watching this for the very first time. This is called the Master of the Mat. I am Anthony Oregon, the Oregon Bryant, and this is my wrestling talk show that I do every once in a while, or when I have a free time to do it. And this is something I like to do because I'm a big time wrestling fan, and I know I know a little bit of something about wrestling. I know a lot of something about wrestling. And so I came on this morning to hop on and express my views on a couple of superstars in the wrestling business, a few superstars in the wrestling business, Cody Rhodes, Bret Hart, just to name a few, and how I feel that these guys are, some of these guys are not who they claim to be or who they want to be. And so let's not waste no more time. Let's get right into it. I'm gonna start off with Bret Hart. And again, this is not me hating on Bret Hart. This is not me throwing salt on Bret Hart game. Not at all. But I'm just going to speak my views and how I feel and how I see it for the way I see it. And that's just it. And whoever don't like it, okay, well, this is how I feel about it. So Bret Hart started his career in Stampede Wrestling, which then he was discovered by one Vince McMahon when Vince went out and bought the territory from Stu Hart, which happened to be Bret Hart's father. And during that time, Vince McMahon discovered a young Bret Hart. Once Vince McMahon bought the territory from Stu Hart, Vince McMahon put together the Hart Foundation, which consisted of Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Bret the Hitman Hart. During that time in the WWF, the Hart Foundation was managed by Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart managed the Hart Foundation to great success. They had an awesome rivalry with the British Bulldog. And for those of you who are not familiar with the British Bulldogs, Dynamite Kid and the Davey Boy Smith. They went on to a great rivalry. The Hart Foundation defeated the British Bulldogs to win their first of two WWE Tag Team Championships. Now, with that being said, Vince McMahon saw this rivalry with a young Jim Neidhart, a young Bret Hart, and Stampede Wrestling. And it's well documented because you can go on the network and go to Stampede, and you can see that this rivalry with the Hart Foundation and the British Bulldogs started in Stampede Wrestling. Now, with that being said, Bret Hart and the British Bulldog will go on to hold the tag team titles for 200 and something days before losing to an up and coming tag team by the name of Strike Force, and which was Tito Santana and Rick Martel. After that, they dropped Jimmy Hart. They went on and SummerSlam of I want to say 1990. I could be wrong, but I know it was SummerSlam. They went into a 2 out of 3 falls match with Demolition. Now, it wasn't the original Demolition that they beat for the tag team championships. They went on to beat Demolition of Smash and Crush. It wasn't Axe and Smash, it was Smash and Crush. Mr. Fuji took over as manager as Demolition, and Demolition went on to win the tag team championship. Crush was added in Demolition later that year and became a tag team champion under the Freebird rule. For those of you who don't know what the Freebird rule is, it's basically Michael Hayes, Jimmy Garvin, Terry Bam Bam Gordy, and Buddy Jack Lane all had when they was tag team champions, any other 4 of them could defend the tag team titles under the Freebird rule. That's where the Freebird rule comes in at. That's why the New Day uses it. That's why a lot of other tag team uses it. So but that's beside the point. So under the Freebird rule, um, Axe Smash and Crush was recognized as the WWF Tag Team Championship. SummerSlam and the matchup was the Road Warriors distracted the Demolition. The Hart Foundation will go on to win their second tag team championships. Now, I'm going to state my opinion on that. Again, it wasn't the Demolition duo that we all are used to of Axe and Smash. It was Crush and Smash. It was never Axe and Crush, or it was never the original Demolition. It was Crush and Smash. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Crush got pinned in that match, so the Hart Foundation go on. Okay, Hart Foundation will hold the tag team titles all the way up until WrestleMania 7, where they would drop them to the Nasty Boys, which would end the Hart Foundation tag team. Bret Hart will go into singles competition and have a great singles competition as it is. And SummerSlam of that same year, the Hart Foundation losing the tag team titles, Bret Hart will challenge Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, at SummerSlam at SummerSlam for the Intercontinental Championship. And it was a great match. It's perhaps one of the greatest Intercontinental title match that you would ever see at SummerSlam. And it was great, but if you look at it, and I want everybody who's watching, I want everybody to listen and listen well when I'm saying to you, Bret Hart beat a Kurt Hennig that was past his prime. And when I mean past his prime, you look at Kurt Hennig starting in AWA when he was teaming with Scott Hall, became tag team champions, and he went into a rivalry with the likes of Nick Bockwinkel, Rick Martel, and Jerry the King Lawler, stuff like that in the AWA. Kurt Hennig came to the WWF at the time and made a name for himself. He never got to that higher up, but he was the Intercontinental Champion a couple times. But Kurt was past his prime, but Kurt still had a lot more in the tank. And when I'm saying by past his prime, Kurt Hennig, even though he was past his prime, he still went out there and performed like it was his prime. Him and Bret Hart, and if Kurt was alive today and Bret was an active wrestler, I guarantee you put Kurt Hennig and Bret Hart in the ring together, then these two guys are going to go. They're going to go. They're going to go, and they're going to go, and they're going to go, and they're going to go until the wheels fall off. But the point I'm making is that Kurt Hennig wasn't the Kurt Hennig we seen in AWA, the great matches he had with Nick Bockwinkel, the matches he had with Jerry the King Lawler. It wasn't the same Kurt Hennig. Because when he got to WWE or WWF, he was told not to use some of the same moves he used in AWA. He could still use the Fisherman Suplex, which was called the Henningplex, and then it was called the Perfect Plex. Then it went back to the Henningplex when he went to WCW. And that made him a household name. Then you want to go, let's go to, okay, but it was a great matchup. But Kurt wasn't in his prime. Before that, before Kurt and Bret Hart had their matches, Kurt was feuding with Hulk Hogan for the WWF Championship. Then he was feuding with Tito Santana. Then he was feuding with a lot of other people. But then him and Bret Hart started feuding. That feud was pretty much one of the best feuds you can ever think of, and it was good. Now, I'm not bad mouthing Bret Hart, but he beat a Kurt Hennig past his prime. Then Bret Hart will go on to hold the Intercontinental Championship for 200 and some days, and he lost in Saskatchewan, Canada to the Mountie. Now, Yes, Bret Hart was advised not to wrestle that night because Bret Hart had a fever of 120 and was told not to wrestle. He went out there, he wrestled, and lost to the Mountie. He lost to the Mountie. He lost the Intercontinental Championship on a live event to the Mountie. The Mountie lost the Intercontinental Championship to Roddy Piper on Saturday night's main event. When Piper came out and he had that shock-proof, he had that shock-proof outfit on because the Mountie would walk around with that stun gun. And it was basically a stun gun. It was a kettle pro. Okay, he was stunning people out of his matches. At WrestleMania in the Hoover Dome, it was built for Bret Hart and Roddy Piper to compete for the WWF Intercontinental Championship. Again, another fantastic matchup where it was Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper. And I'm standing on what I say. Bret Hart beat Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper passed his prime. Piper was doing everything he did. Piper had some of the greatest matches in NWA with Greg Valentine. That dog collar match, I watched that a couple of nights ago on Peacock, and that match was awesome. Then you go back to the matches he had with Ric Flair, with the matches he had with Bobo Zero, the matches he had with guys like Bobby Orton, and Roddy Piper had some awesome matches, but that Greg Valentine match put Piper on the map. And was Piper in his prime when he came to WWF? Yeah, he was in his prime, but when he met Bret Hart, he was past his prime because when Piper came to WWF, Piper had a rivalry with Hulk Hogan. The score to settle the score didn't really schedule the score to settle it all. Didn't really settle nothing because Roddy Piper, it ended in a double disqualification because Vince didn't want his main guy, which was Hulk Hogan at the time, to lose to Roddy Piper. Let's just call it what it is. Vince had a prime. How can I put this? Vince McMahon had a primary view with Hulk Hogan to the point where he banked his company on Hogan for close to 3 years. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, but the way he did it was awesome. But then Vince saw a young, upcoming Canadian Bret the Hitman Hart, and he gave Bret Hart the shine. Bret Hart would go on to become the Intercontinental Champ for a second time in an awesome match at WrestleMania in the Hoover Dome in Indianapolis against Roddy Piper. Another guy passed his prime, but Piper still had more in the tank, and it was a good matchup. Even though these guys, Curt Hennig and Roddy Piper, was past their prime, they still took it to Bret Hart. They still gave it to Bret Hart like it was their time. They passed the torch to the Hitman. And that's exactly what Curt Hennig did. That's exactly what Roddy Piper did. They passed the torch. So SummerSlam the following year in the Wembley Dome in London, it was Bret Hart and the British Bulldog for the Intercontinental Championship. The British Bulldog beat Bret Hart to win his first and only Intercontinental Championship. After that, Bret Hart will go on a bunch of single feuds with the likes of Papa Shango, Ted DiBiase, and stuff like that, guys like that. Okay, and Saskatchewan, Canada, where he lost the Intercontinental Championship to the Mountie, Bret Hart will go in Canada and beat Ric Flair to win his first of 5 WWF championships. Okay, again, he beat a wrestler past his prime, but still had a lot to prove. Ric Flair, who wrestled in the NWA for all them years, and Flair had some awesome matches in NWA. His feud with Dusty Rhodes put the NWA on the map. His feud with Ronnie Garvin, his feud with Sting, his feud with Lex Luger. The Horsemen against Dusty Rhodes pretty much made NWA WCW. Before there was an NWO attacking people in the locker room, the Horsemen was beating up Dusty Rhodes, recording it and beating the crap out of him. Before the NWO ran rapid in professional wrestling, the Horsemen ran rapid in NWA. Ric Flair, Teddy Blanchard, Arn Anderson, Lex Luger, Ole Anderson, they all ran roughshod in the NWA WCW. And Ric Flair had a heck of a run in WCW. and then WA. Then he came to WWF, and he had a heck of a run, winning the WWF title twice in the Royal Rumble. Then he beat Randy Savage on a live tour. Then he went up against Bret Hart in Canada and lost the WWF Championship. Bret Hart will go on to hold that championship until WrestleMania 10, where he would lose to Yokozuna, who lost the championship in under 30 seconds to Hulk Hogan, which should never happen. But again, another Vince guy. Okay? During this whole time, an up-and-coming superstar by the name of Bret Hart, by the name of Shawn Michaels, was developing. He left Monty Jannetty. They put him with Sensational Sherry. And Sensational Sherry had made stars before that, and she made stars after that. Sherry was with Randy Savage when he was King Macho. Sherry then went with Ted DiBiase. But before all that, she was in AWA, and she managed a tag team by the name of Loverboy, and I forgot the other guy's name in AWA, and they was a tag team champions in AWA. Before that, Sensational Sherry was a beast in the women's division, the AWA women's champion, and she was also the WWF women's champion. So Sensational Sherry helped make the career of Shawn Michaels. So after all that, WWF put her with Shawn Michaels. At Survivor Series, the same year Bret Hart won the WWF Championship, he went up against Shawn Michaels and beat Shawn Michaels. Before that, they had the very first ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship where Bret Hart came out on top. Before that, they were in tag team on the Hart Foundation and the Rockers on the Saturday Night's Main Event, where WWF robbed the Rockers when they beat the Hart Foundation for the tag team titles. But it was never recognized. Now you look at the Bret Hart now as the WWF champion and going on to WrestleMania and losing to Yokozuna, who lost to Hulk Hogan, which was a fart in his own mind. I'm just speaking how I feel, but because Hogan was a Vince guy, that's how it went down. At the King of the Ring that following year, Yokozuna won back the championship. Yokozuna will go on to hold the WWF championship until WrestleMania 10 that following year, where he would defend the championship not once, but twice. Now, here's something that I learned recently, and because I watched Jim Cornette's podcast, and I watched JR's podcast. JR was just getting his feet wet as what position JR had? As the Executive Vice President of Talent. Jim Cornette was the Executive Vice President of Talent during WrestleMania 10 and 11 and 12. Well, during 10 and 11, he stepped down, family problems, but that's beside the point. Okay? The match, the WWF Championship matches was changed twice because Vince wanted Luger and Bret Hart to end the show. But according to Jim Cornette, Bret Hart felt that he couldn't do business like he could do business with Yokozuna. He felt that Luger, if he won the championship, Luger was going to go out there and sham him. That wasn't the case. If Luger would have won the championship that night, he would have lost the title back to Bret Hart, but it was changed because Bret felt that he couldn't do business with Lex Luger. Okay. Kurt Hennig disqualified Lex Luger in the matchup of Mr. Perfect. Kurt Hennig, same person, disqualified Lex Luger in the match. But if you look at that WrestleMania 11 card, WrestleMania 10 card, that match was overshadowed by a ladder match with Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon that stole the entire show. Shawn and Razor went out there and stole the show, and Ric Flair went out there, and this is the best quote Ric Flair has ever quoted. He said for 45 minutes, Shawn Michaels went out there and had a match with a ladder. It just so happens another guy was in the match. He diminished Scott Hall's appearance in that matchup just by saying that one phrase. Well, what Ric Flair failed to realize is that Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon went out there and for 45 minutes beat the crap out of each other, using the ladders, using their wrestling abilities, and did it all. Shawn Michaels did moves with ladders that some guys still can't do with ladders. And in my opinion, Shawn Michaels is one of the greatest ladder match performers of all time, next to Jeff Hardy. But that WrestleMania 10 matchup that set the ground for ladder match was Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels. They stole the show. After that, nobody else cared. Nobody else. They were so exhausted after that next matchup. Nobody else wanted to know what happened. Hold on. It was simply the best matchup. Then the main event, Roddy Piper, referee Bret Hart, and Yokozuna. Okay. It was good. Yoko missed the banzai drop. Well, he failed, just like he did when he fought Steve Austin. 1 or 2, he missed the banzai drop. Bret Hart pinned him to win his second WWF Championship. He will go on to hold the championship for a while. He lost the championship. He lost the championship to Bob Backlund at Survivor Series because Owen Hart tricked his mother and throwing in the towel in an I Quit match, in a submission match, and Owen Hart was devious with it. He went out there and said, "He's gonna hurt her, Mom. Throw the towel in. Throw the towel in." Stu said no, but the mom threw the towel in, gave Bob Backlund his second WWF championship. Now, with that being said, Bob Backlund only held the title 8 days before losing to Diesel in Madison Square Garden. Now, it was said that Shawn was put with Diesel, and was he really put with Diesel? See, this is what I want you to think about when you say this. Think about this. Everybody, with the exception of Sensational Sherry, because her career was already made when she was with Shawn Michaels, everybody that was put with Shawn Michaels went on to make a huge name for themselves. Think about that. If it wasn't for Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash wouldn't have went on and became the biggest star he was by using his real name in WCW. He made a boatload of money in WCW with the NWO. Because at one point, when he was in WCW tried to kill his career. They gave him stupid gimmicks. They gave him the Oz gimmick. They gave him the Vinny Vegas gimmick. Those gimmicks sucked. He came to WWF and he got with Shawn Michaels. He became Shawn Michaels' bodyguard at Diesel. Now, yes, we all know, and I'm standing on it, and I stand on it today. I said it before, and I'm saying it again. Diesel was a transitional champion. He was not supposed to be a long-term champion, but they kept that title on Diesel because Bret Hart wanted the title. Vince did not want another debacle because at WrestleMania 11, Shawn Michaels carried Diesel in the WWF Championship matchup. That's exactly why that match wasn't the main event. If you go back and watch Shawn and Diesel at WrestleMania, Shawn carried Diesel. It's not supposed to be that way. The champion is supposed to carry the challenger. But no, Shawn carried Diesel. And you look at that match, it was sad. Because that entire match, Diesel missed spat after spat after spat. But they kept the title on him. Why? Because Vince had an infatuation with big men. Don't know why, but he did. And you talk about transitional champions, that's exactly what he was. And I'm going to boldly say it, when Diesel was champion, Shawn wasn't ready for the scrap. Nobody was ready for the scrap. That's why Diesel kept the scrap as long as he did. The worst WWF champion of all time was Diesel. Didn't draw a dime. But WWF made the conscious decision to keep the scrap on Diesel. So you go to Landover. You go to Survivor Series. Shawn Michaels come back. Bret Hart come back. And this is 4 months after Shawn Michaels had to forfeit the Intercontinental Championship because he was beat up at a nightclub. Then you go and you put Shawn Michaels in the very first and only wild card match. We had a team with Psycho Sid and the British Bulldog and an up-and-coming Ahmed Johnson to go against Razor Ramon, Shane Douglas, Yokozuna, and Owen Hart. Shawn team won. What you expect? It's Shawn Michaels. Then you go to the main event. No disqualification. Diesel and Bret Hart. I'm not the biggest Bret Hart fan, but I will say this right now. Bret Hart carried that match. Diesel big for no dang on reason and didn't do nothing. Then he get pissed off because he lost the match to a small package. You was supposed to lose the match to a sharpshooter, but you missed the spot. Then you go to WrestleMania 12 with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart in the Iron Man match. Perhaps the greatest Iron Man match ever. Ends in the draw. Gorilla Monsoon comes in the match. It must be a winner. Shawn and Bret, who wrestled for an hour, went back out there and wrestled for another 20 minutes. Shawn hits Sweet Chin Music, wins his first championship, and goes on to become the WWF champion. While Bret Hart takes time off, and don't come back until Survivor Series of that year, where he had a heck of a match with Stone Cold Steve Austin at Survivor Series. Now you talk about great matches. Let's stay at Survivor Series right there, because that match with Stone Cold and Bret Hart, that was excellent. Bret Hart put Stone Cold on the mat in that matchup and at WrestleMania 13. Did Austin tap in that submission match? No, Austin passed out. Did he give it to Bret Hart? Yes, he did, because that night the fans turned on Bret Hart and turned for Stone Cold. Or as Michael Hayes would said it, they turned off for Bret Hart and turned on for Stone Cold. That same Survivor Series, Shawn Michaels' former bodyguard, Sid Vicious, a.k.a. Psycho Sid, becomes the WWF champion. Sid Vicious will go on to become WWF champion, hold the championship until Royal Rumble, where Shawn Michaels lost, to Shawn Michaels at the Royal Rumble. That's the same Royal Rumble where Stone Cold was eliminated from the match, but ended up winning the Royal Rumble. Don't know how that happened, but it happened. A couple of weeks later, Shawn Michaels goes on Monday Night Raw with the most stupidest storyline that WWF ever put together. I lost my smile. I have to forfeit the title because I lost my smile. So because you lost your smile, you're going to vacate the WWF championship. That's what wrestling's all about. You losing your smile. They have a fatal four-way elimination match at In Your House Fatal Four-Way, which again was a stupid name. Bret Hart wins his fourth WWF championship. Only keeps it for 24 hours because he lost to Sid Vicious the next night on Monday Night Raw. As I mentioned earlier, Bret Hart will go to WrestleMania 13 and win against Stone Cold Steve Austin because Stone Cold tapped out. No, he didn't tap. I'm sorry, he passed out because of blood loss. Then you go, okay. Then you go from there. You go all the way to SummerSlam because that same night at WrestleMania 13, The Undertaker won his second WWF championship. You go to SummerSlam where Bret Hart fought The Undertaker with Shawn Michaels as special referee. Because what happened, because Shawn Michaels swung the chair and missed Bret Hart because Bret Hart ducked. Did he duck, or did Shawn hit Taker on purpose just so he can make more money with Bret Hart? Did he really? Was Shawn intended to hit Bret, or did he really want to hit Undertaker and start a rivalry with the dead man and will go on and make more money than he ever made in his life with the Undertaker? Bret Hart will go on a rivalry with the Patriot, who wrestled in WCW as the Patriot, and that rivalry was semi-okay, but it was a rivalry nonetheless. Snapping turtles today. Huh? Okay. Then we go to Montreal, the famous screw job. because I said it with Diesel and I said it with Sid. WWE during the time before the Montreal Screwjob, WWF put Shawn Michaels with a Hunter, a Hunter Hearst Helmsley, aka Triple H. Okay, Sid would go leave WWF, go to Memphis, then go to WCW where he made it big when he joined Team Madness. And so that's the second person WWF put with Shawn Michaels that made big for himself. Because Diesel made it big on his own name as Kevin Nash, and Sid made it big when he joined Team Madness. Sensational Sherry was already big. So now WWF puts Chyna and Hunter Hearst Helmsley with Shawn Michaels. And I stand on this 100%. If it wasn't for Shawn Michaels, Triple H wouldn't have got as edgier as he got. Because if it wasn't for Shawn Michaels, Triple H would probably still be doing that prancy blue blood, that bowing down crap that made him nothing. But when he got with Shawn Michaels, he became edgier. He became more aggressive. He became who he became. He became the cerebral assassin because of Shawn Michaels. After DX split up after WrestleMania, Triple H went on to be perhaps one of the biggest heels in WWE history. So, but that's another story. That's another story for another time, but we're going to keep where we're at right now. Montreal, the screw job. Bret Hart did not want to lose in Montreal. Bret Hart felt that because, and this is an untold story, and this is an untold truth. Bret Hart was wrestling. He wrestled Montreal without a WWF contract. Yeah, that's how we met Chyna, because of Triple H. Well, the fact that she strangled the crap out of Terry on the episode of Monday Night Raw didn't do anything, didn't tarnish her fame. But yeah, okay, Bret Hart was wrestling without a WWF contract. Bret Hart was in negotiation with WCW. Eric Bischoff was in Montreal. He can lie and say he wasn't, but he was. He was at the arena the night Bret Hart got screwed. Now, with all that being said, with all that being said, they had a meeting before Survivor Series, the day of Survivor Series, because Vince was going to go ahead and let Bret Hart win over Shawn Michaels when Bret Hart knew when Bret Hart knew in his heart that was stupid. But Vince McMahon allowing Bret to be Bret, and was going to let him win over Shawn Michaels. They go into a closed door meeting. Triple H came out and said, if he don't want to do business, then darn it, we do business for him. And that's when the whole Montreal Screwjob was around. In that meeting was referee Earl Hebner. In that meeting was Shawn Michaels, was Triple H, was Chyna, was Shane McMahon, was Don and Ron Harris, who played security that night, Jim Cornette, JR. Because the rumor was that Bret Hart was going to take the WWF Championship to Monday Nitro and do the same thing Medusa did with it when she threw the Women's Championship in the trash can. That was the rumor. Bret Hart denies that, but that was the rumor. So they had a banger match. I'm not even going to say it wasn't a good match. Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart went out there and they had a banger matchup. Shawn being his course of annoying self, coming out to the ring, putting the Canadian flag in his nose, doing all the hizzy fit, doing all the stuff that Shawn Michaels did to annoy you. Shawn was very annoying back then, according to Jim Ross. I think it wasn't just Jim Ross. I think it was a lot of people, but according to Jim Ross, Michael Hayes, and Jim Cornette, Shawn Michaels was a very annoying person back then. But Shawn went out there and he did his annoying self. A lot of people didn't know what was going to happen. The only few people knew what was going to happen was Earl, Shawn, It was Earl and Sean. Paul Levesque, aka Triple H. Those are the only three people knew the outcome of the match. Brett was under the assumption that he was going to win, go to Raw, vacate the title, a tournament was going to start. If Vince would have went along with his plan, the tournament would have started the same night on Monday Night Raw, and it would end at D-Generation X pay-per-view, where Ken Shamrock would have lost to Shawn Michaels. It didn't go that far. They had a heck of a matchup at Survivor Series where Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, they took each other. They did what they did, and they wrestled it. Then they wrestled a good matchup. The Montreal Screwjob was assisted when Bret Hart put the sharpshooter on the shot, when Shawn Michaels put the sharpshooter on Bret Hart, and the bell rung. Bret didn't tap. Bret didn't do nothing. Bret lost. After the match, Bret Hart hocked up a huge loogie and spit it right in the face of Vince McMahon. When the cameras went off the air, Bret Hart destroyed every monitor at ringside. He destroyed 2 cameras. During the cameras rolling, he wrote WCW. Just like that. It took WCW 9 months to debut Bret Hart. Now, the Montreal Screwjob happened in 96. No, I'm sorry. It took him 96. In 1997, WCW had their biggest starcade of all, which was Sting and Hollywood Hogan for the World Championship. From Survivor Series that same year, Bret Hart was supposed to, I'm sorry, it didn't take him that long. I'm exaggerating with the longest, but it took him a long time to debut Bret Hart, where they should have debuted him right away because Bret Hart had no contract. At that time, there was no 90-day clause in your contract, no 90-day non-compete clause in your contract. You can leave when your contract up and just go wrestle for another company. But it took WCW so long to debut Bret Hart where his debut was tarnished. Because he didn't come in, he didn't wrestle at Starrcade. He was a referee at Starrcade for Larry Zbyszko and Eric Bischoff match. Bret Hart run in WCW was nowhere the excellent run he had in WWF. He won the U.S. title 4 times when he beat the likes of DDP, Lex Luger, Goldberg, and DDP again. He won the tag team titles with Goldberg. He beat Goldberg to become the WCW World Heavyweight Champion twice, but he didn't beat Goldberg the second time. I really don't know who he beat the second time for the title. No, I'm sorry. Goldberg was his second reign. He beat Chris Benoit in the tournament final to win the WCW title the first time. Bret Hart wants to talk about Goldberg ending his career. It was an error kick. Goldberg accidentally, where it was supposed to be his thigh that hit Bret Hart, it was the bottom of Goldberg's boot that hit Bret Hart in the side of a match that caused him to have a seizure in the match. During the seizure, WCW cameras, because it happened on Nitro, during the seizure, the WCW cameras zoomed away when the commercial break. When they came back, nobody was in the ring. That's what ended Bret Hart's career. It was an error kick. I don't think Goldberg meant to do it. I don't think Goldberg intentionally meant to do it. It was an error kick. Because if you watched it, the spot was supposed to be Goldberg run in and Bret Hart go for a big boot, but they had the audible because Bret Hart came up a little bit slow and Goldberg went for a side kick, but he tried to turn it to a side kick, but it ended up being a boot, and it caught Bret right in the temple. And it connected real hard where it caused Bret Hart to have a seizure in the match. Again, WCW, they pounded away, they screamed away. When the commercial break came back, it was a whole, the ring was empty. It wasn't talked about. He went to WCW, won 4 WCW United States championships. He won 1 World Tag Team Championship and won 2 WCW championships. In WWF, he won 2 Intercontinental championships, 2 Tag Team championships, and 5 WWF championships. He's an overall 7-time World Heavyweight Champion. The most overrated superstar in WWF history. He called himself the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. He called himself the excellence of execution. And yes, he deserved all those monograms. But when it came to making money decisions, and at the time the WWF was struggling and to pay talent, Bret Hart was doing that pre-Attitude Era, or doing what was that? It was Attitude Era. Before the Attitude Era, it was a new edit. There was a new I forget what era it was, but before all that, Bret Hart was the most paid superstar in WWF. And when he was supposed to take a pay cut, he made a big fuss about it. He eventually took the pay cut so others can get a pay cut up. But he felt like Vince was about to promote people that didn't deserve to be promoted. Bret had nothing against Shawn Michaels. Bret had nothing against nobody. Bret wanted to work. As one of the guys Bret Hart wanted to work with was Shawn Michaels, because he loved the way Shawn performed in that ring as a rocker. But the incident, they had a locker room brawl off screen. They had a locker room brawl before the show went on. And Shawn Michaels went out there and aired dirty laundry in midair when he came out and made a statement. Even though Bret Hart has had a lot more sunny days than I have, because at the time, Shawn Michaels was dating Sunny. But what people don't tell people is that Sunny cheated on Chris Candido with Shawn Michaels. No, Sunny cheated on Shawn Michaels. No, she cheated on Chris Candido with Shawn Michaels. I had it right the first time, which ended Chris Candido and Sunny's relationship. And for those of you who don't know who Chris Candido is, he's Skip. Skip is a former WWF Tag Team Champion, and he's a former ECW Tag Team Champion. He's also a former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and he's a former WCW Cruiserweight Champion. So, yeah, it's a whole lot. They went out there, the brawl happened. But if WWE was smart enough, they would have capitalized on the real life heat that Shawn and Bret had, and they would have brought it full force, and they would have made both of them a whole lot of money. It was a real life heat feud between Shawn and Bret. They didn't care for each other because both men wanted that top position. Both men wanted that top spot, and only one of them can have it. Bret Hart, Hall of Famer. Shawn Michaels, Hall of Famer. Both men are 2-time Hall of Famers, and they both deserve it. They both deserve it. And they got a lot of guys that there's a lot of guys that came to WWF with the expectations of becoming the top dog in WWF, and not a lot of guys reached that expectation because of Vince was infatuated with big guys. You got guys like Robinson Rick Rude, who's a former Intercontinental Champion in WWF, but never reached the top. You got guys, but he went to WCW, he went to WCCW, and became world champion. Rick Rude is a recognized world champion because he beat Ric Flair at Fall Brawl to win his very first World Heavyweight Championship. Now, what the sad part about that whole thing, it was supposed to be Rick Rude winning the World Heavyweight Championship, the WCW World Heavyweight Championship off of Ric Flair. But during that time, the NWA withdrew from WCW, and WCW made a partnership with New Japan Pro Wrestling. So they turned Ric Flair's World Championship into the International World Heavyweight Championship. he's still a recognized world heavyweight champion, but it's a slap in the face to go from a world champion to an international world heavyweight champion. I mean, but it happens. But he didn't complain about it. He took that title and made that title what it was. He went out there and he had great matches with Big Boss Man, with Sting, with Two Cold Scorpio, with Arn Anderson, with guys like that, Barry Windham, Dustin Rhodes. Okay, but one thing people don't realize and one thing people don't talk about when it comes to Rick Rude was the first person to be in the club. And he was the first member of that club. And I'm trying to think back because I think Rude was the very first member. If I'm wrong, I got to do my research. But back in the day, it was an unrecognizable club of guys who've held the U.S. and Intercontinental Championship. And if I'm not mistaken, Rick Rude was the very first member. Rick Rude was the first person to win the United States Championship, the WCW. And I'm not talking about the WWE's United States Championship. I'm talking about the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship and the WWF Intercontinental Championship. So Rick Rude was the very first member of that club. I could be wrong, but I believe I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I think it's Rude because back then nobody recognized that club, and it took them a while to recognize that club. Rude was the first member. And there's a lot of guys who've held WCW and WWF Intercontinental Championship. I mean, Roddy Piper. No, yeah, I am wrong. I'm dead wrong because it was Roddy Piper. That was the first member. Then it was Rick Rude. Okay. I thought about that. It was Roddy Piper. Then it was Rick Rude. So you got Roddy Piper, Rick Rude, Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, Ric Flair, Chris Benoit, Bret Hart. That's just to name a few who held the U.S., the WCW U.S., and the WWF Intercontinental Championship. I mean, like I said, guys came in think they was going to be the top dog in WWF and didn't be the top dog. Kurt Hennig was the top dog in AWA when he won the AWA World Heavyweight Championship from Nick Bockwinkel. But before that, he won the tag team title with Big Scott Hall, who later became Razor Ramon. Kurt Hennig had great matches in AWA with Nick Bockwinkel, Rick Martel, Larry Zbyszko, Jerry the King Lawler, Kerry Von Erich. He had some great matches with all those guys. Then he came to WWF and he had good matches with Hogan. It wasn't great, it was good. But he had his great match with Bret Hart at SummerSlam. But this is when Kurt Hennig was past his prime. But he still had great matches. A wrestler past his prime will give you his all and give you a great matchup. Now, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with being past your prime, but the point I'm making is that the guys that passed their prime, they did more for professional wrestling than the guys that was in their prime. You look at what the wrestling business have given us in the past. It's given us a lot of great matches that consist of Bret Hart, that consist of Shawn Michaels, that consist of Kurt Hennig, that consist of Rick Rude, that consist of Ric Flair. Ric Flair and Sting didn't have one bad match. Rick Rude and Roddy Piper didn't have one bad match. Bret Hart and Kurt Hennig didn't have one bad match. Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart didn't have one bad match. Shawn Michaels can boast that he's beaten Bret Hart's brother and both his brother-in-laws. Actually, he said that on national TV, but it happened. They never beat him. Bulldog never beat Shawn. Neidhart never beat Shawn. Orton never beat Shawn. It happens. And you look at what has come from the wrestling business. Okay, then you got guys. Then you got people like the Dusty Rhodes' baby boy, Cody Rhodes. And we can talk about Cody Rhodes because Cody Rhodes started off in OVW, winning the OVW TV Tag Team and World Championships. Then got a call up when WWE was still working with OVW. Got a call up to the main roster, losing to Hardcore Holly twice before he finally beat Hardcore Holly. Then Hardcore Holly got a measure of respect for him, and they went on to become tag team champions. Then Cody turned on Hardcore Holly to become tag team champions with Ted DiBiase Jr., which will be Cody's second tag team title reign. Then they would lose the titles to Batista and John Cena and win them back the following week. Then they would finally drop the World Tag Team titles to Kofi and CM Punk. Then they would join Legacy. That's when Cody became, doing that whole time in Priceless, he was a B+ average wrestler at the most. Then he joined up with Manu, Samoan. I want to say that's Samu's son. I could be wrong. These Samoans got too many kids, you can't keep up with who the father is sometimes. And him and DiBiase joined Legacy, along with Randy Orton. Cody became an A+ player. He made his WrestleMania debut and a triple threat match with Cody and Ted DiBiase, which he lost. Great matchup. All three men put on a heck of a show. All three men carried the match. It was a good match. Then he became Dashing Cody Rhodes. Because of an error moonsault on Rey Mysterio's behalf, that Cody Rhodes took a knee of Rey Mysterio's knee brace to the nose, broke his nose. After that, he took time off to get his nose surgery repaired, came back as disastrous Cody Rhodes. After all that, he came back as Mustache Cody Rhodes. Okay? Came Mustache Cody Rhodes. Then he went on a losing streak, came back, and the WWE gave him charge of beating the Shield, going into Battleground. Him and his brother, along with their daddy, the great American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, will go in and beat the Shield, Roman and Seth, at Battleground. After that, they would win the tag team titles together. They would lose the tag team titles. They would go on a losing streak, and Cody got fed up, transformed himself to Stardust. The most disrespectful part about that whole transformation is the fact that Goldust was not who it was. Goldust was Stardust's Robin of the group. After everything Goldust contributed with that Goldust gimmick, people didn't want to wrestle Goldust. Scott Hall is one of the guys that come to name, didn't want to wrestle him. But after all those guys, after all what Goldust gave, you're going to make Goldust a Robin character in the Stardust, because it should have been Gold and Stardust, but no, it was Star and Goldust. Becoming tag team champions twice. When the match was proposed that let's have a Stardust and Gold, let's have a Stardust and Goldust match at WrestleMania. Cody said, "Where's the money? It's not going to draw. It's not going to draw." Cody words. They nicked it. Because he felt the Stardust character have ran its course, which it has. He wanted to go back to Cody Rhodes, and they wouldn't let him. So he decided to leave WWE and go on the independent circuit, where he would go to New Japan and win the New Japan United States Heavyweight Championship. He would go to ring. He would go to Jeff Jarrett's new up and coming company and win their Gen X championship. Then he would go to Ring of Honor, become a 6-man tag team champion over there because of the Freebird rule, because he's part of Buddy Club. Then he would go on and win the Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Championship. Then, in his biggest achievement yet, he sold out Sears. He sold out Chicago's arena for the very first All In, where he would wrestle NWA's World Heavyweight Champion at the time, Nick Aldrich, who's the current SmackDown General Manager. And he would beat Nick Aldrich to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, giving him his second World Heavyweight Championship. He would go on to hold the title for 75 days before Nick would win the title back. Then AEW was created because Cody was the executive vice president, along with Nick Jackson, Mac Jackson, and Kenny Omega. Cody would have some great matches in AEW with the likes of MJF, Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin. And I'm not a Cody hater, but I will give him his proper due. Cody put over Darby Allin. Cody put over Sammy. Cody put over MJF. Because if Cody didn't do that, there will be no MJF, there will be no Sammy, and there will be no Darby. Cody had a match for the AEW World Championship against Chris Jericho, lost. And if Cody couldn't, if he didn't win, he wouldn't challenge for the title no more. Time goes on. Cody wins the AEW TNT Championship in a dog collar match in a classic matchup with the late Brody Lee, aka Luke Harper. It was a classic because both men put on a classic for that title, and Cody won the match. After the matchup, off camera, it was an incident in the locker room with Cody, Nick, and Matt. Kenny Omega got involved, and there was an incident with Kenny Omega. Cody said enough is enough. He couldn't take it no more. He couldn't take it no more, and he went on, and they refused. Tony Khan refused to offer Cody a new contract in AEW because of the influence of Nick and Matt Jackson and Kenny Omega. Cody would give up his executive vice president position, leave AEW, and make a surprise return at WrestleMania 38 when he fought Seth Rollins in night 1. To everybody's surprise, Cody won the match. It was a heck of a matchup. Him and Seth would redo it again at WrestleMania Backlash, where Cody won again. Cody would tear his pec bone off the bone and still compete inside Hell in a Cell, where he beat Seth Rollins again. Taking time off, Cody would take time off and would miss half of the year, come back at last year's Royal Rumble and win the Royal Rumble at number 30, becoming only the third man to win the Royal Rumble at number 30. The first being The Undertaker, the second being John Cena, and now it being now it's Cody Rhodes. Not a bad company to be a listing as Royal Rumble winners. Taker, Cena, not bad at all. He would go on to WrestleMania 39 and Night 2 in Inglewood and have a heck of a match with Roman Reigns. But the level of competition Roman Reigns is at, there's nobody better than Roman right now. I don't care what company you work for. I don't care who you think you are. There's nobody better than Roman Reigns. Cody would form a tag team duo with Jey Uso, and they would win the tag team championships, losing them a week later to Judgment Day. Now he's in a rivalry with Shinsuke Nakamura, and where's it at? The American Nightmare is the most overrated superstar in professional wrestling history. And the opportunities that he was given should have been given to his older brother, Dustin Rhodes. Because Dustin had to deal with a gimmick by the name of the natural Dustin Rhodes. And it worked for him in WCW. But he did it. Then he gets to WWF and they make him this androgynous character called Goldust. And he makes a lot of money off Goldust. Dustin should have been a world champ by now. Now that Tony Khan owns Ring of Honor, that Ring of Honor world title doesn't mean beans. It doesn't mean beans. My problem with Cody is that make your own legacy. You did a good job on the independent scene. Make your own legacy. And be who you are. That's all I'm saying. And this has been an edition of Master of the Mat. Thank the people that watched and came in and came out. I appreciate it. Thank you all so much. This has been yeah. And I will be back with another edition of the Master of the Mat. Until then, y'all have a wonderful and blessed Friday. I'm out.